On this one, the square root of 4 is 2. So 8 times 2 is 16. D. On this one, remember the square root of 8 breaks up as 2 square root of 2. So that's a 2, not a 3. So it should be 30 square root of 2, which is A. On this one, the square root of 12 breaks up as square root of 4 and square root of 3. This is a 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 square root of 3. On this one, the square root of 24 breaks up as 4 and 6. Of course, this is a 2 times 6 is 16, so it's 16 square root of 6. Bring up a number from 1 to 20. The winning numbers today are 2, 3, 7, 9, 15. On the homework check today, you have two different things, and the first one we're going to look at will be the homework from Friday. On the first one from Friday, it was 3 out of 15, which reduces to 1 over 5. That's at 20%. On the one from yesterday, we have 1 out of 15, which would be 7%. Here is the objective for today. To simplify radical expression, this will be a review. We're going to go back to some of the basic stuff so we can try to build ahead again. These are flashcards. When you know the answer, say it out loud.
4 over 2. Or
4 square root of 2.
8 square root of 3.
8 square root of 3.
12 square root of 4.
12 square root of 6.
20 square root of 4.
40.
24 square root of 4.
24 square root of 5. 16. 15. 20 square root of 7. 18.
24 square root of 3.
24 square root of 3. Here's example 1. We'll go back to the beginning on this with the fractions. When you have a square root on the bottom and it's only multiplied by something or it's just by itself, that's when you multiply the top and the bottom by that square root. And when you multiply on top, you get 4 square root of 2, and on the bottom, square root of 2 times itself is just 2. And then simplify the fraction. 2 into 4 twice, into itself once. That's just reducing a fraction. So down here the 1 is just gone. Can't have a 1 on the bottom. So you have 2 square root of 2 for the final answer. Again, multiply the top and the bottom by this. And on the top, 4 square root of 2. And on the bottom, you have square root of 2 times itself, which is 2. 4 over 2 is just 2. So 2 square root of 2. Here's example number 2. There's a square root of 8 on the bottom. You have two choices. One is to multiply the top and the bottom by square root of 8, or you can simplify it first. Let's simplify first. What is the square root of 8 simplified?
2 square root of 2.
2 square root of 2. We've done that one enough times that you should know it, just like you know 5 squared is 25. Now multiply the top and the bottom by that square root that's on the bottom. You do not have to multiply the top and the bottom by this 2. That would just be extra work you'd be putting on yourself. It's only the square root. So when you multiply, you get 3 square root of 2 on top, and on the bottom, keep this 2, and then multiply the square root of 2 by itself to get 2. Of course, that bottom simplifies to 4, and there's nothing else you can do to this. So it's just 3 square root of 2 over 4. On the practice problem, you have to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 10, which is 2 square root of 10 over, this times itself is just 10. Reduce the 2 over 10 to 1 over 5, and you don't need to write the 1. So square root of 10 over 5. For this bonus problem, square root of 2 times itself is 2. Square root of 3 times itself is 3. Answer is 6. Try this if you're finished with the practice. On the bonus, see if you can organize these to where it's to your advantage. For example, don't just multiply straight across. You have 2 4s in there, and the square root of 4 times itself is just 4. And what's left is 6 times 5 for the square root of 30. Can't break up the square root of 30, so it's just 4 square root of 30. Try another bonus if you're done with the practice. There are a bunch of different ways that you can do this, but try to group things together that will help you out. For example, 2 times 8 is 16. The square root of 16 is 4. And then you have square root of 2 times itself is just 2, and the square root of 4 is 2. So 4 times 4 is 16. Here's the bonus problem, but done a different way. If you multiply here, here, and here, you get the square root of 8, right? Square root of 8 times square root of 8 is what? It's just 8. It's just 8. And what's the square root of 4? 2. 16. Yeah, here's another way to do it. This is how Lawhorn did it. If you do 2 times 8 is 16, times 2 is 32, times 2 is 64, times 4 is 256. Remember, that's a square root. The square root of 256 is 16. On the practice problem, you multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 5, and that will be 3 square root of 5 over 5, and there's nothing more you can do to it. For this bonus problem, notice that you have 5 and 10. That's 50. 50 times 2 is 100. The square root of 100 is 10. And the square root of 6 is already simplified. There's nothing you can do with it. Here's a different way of doing this, and this will work on all of them. If you want to do them all this way, then try it this way. So 6 times 5 is 30. 30 times 10 is 300, times 2 is 600. So now you have to find a perfect square that comes out of 600, the highest one, and that would be 100. And of course that will simplify down to 10 square root of 6. Here's another bonus problem. On this problem, notice that you have a pair of square root of 8s. That'll just give you 8. And a pair of square root of 2s. That'll just give you 2. And a pair of square root of 3s. That'll just give you 3. And then up against the square root of 12. That would be 48 square root of 12, but don't forget that you have to break up the square root of 12. So that would be 48 poorly written 48, times the square root of 4, square root of 3. And this is 2, so 48 times 2 is 96. And then the square root of 3. The answer on this one is A.
Somebody tried to come in.
Maybe we should let them.
Answer on this one is C. Answer on this one is C. The answer on this one is B. Here's another example. You have a square root on top and a square root on bottom. So you still multiply the top and the bottom by the square root from the bottom. On the top you would get square root of 6, and on the bottom it's just 3. Now this one can't be simplified any further, but before you determine that, make sure you look here, and if that can be broken up, do it. And look here and this spot there. See if you can reduce a fraction. But in this one you can't. Example 4. You have square root of 8 on top and square root of 6 on the bottom. You should simplify first and come up with 2 square root of 2 on top, because that one breaks up as 4 and 2, and the square root of 4 is 2. And then multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 6 and come up with 2 square root of 12 over 6. Now you have 12, the square root of 12 that can simplify, and the 2 over 6. How did I get what? The square root of 12 came from up here. You have square root of 2 times square root of 6. So that would give me the square root of 12. Now simplify the square root of 12 as 4 and 3, but it dwindles down to 2 square root of 3. And you would have a 4 square root of 3 on top and a 6 on the bottom. You can simplify this fraction. 2 goes into 4 twice and into 6 3 times. So it would be 2 square root of 3 over 3. Simplify the top first to come up with 2 square root of 3. And then multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 10. And you should get 2 square root of 30 over 10, which reduces down to square root of 30 over 5. Here's a bonus problem. On the bonus problem, you have 5 and 10 is 50, times 2 is 100. The square root of 100 comes out to be 10. And then you have the square root of 4, which is 2. So it should be 20. Here's another bonus. This will give you a square root of 27. This will give you a square root of 27. Multiply them together, you just get 27. And then these two will give you the square root of 16, which is 4. Answer is 108.